Hello, LinkedIn. Hope you're doing well. The best way to know how someone feels about you is to ask yourself how you feel about them. And this is true most of the time. How do you give an impression that you are competent on an interview? On interviews, they'll ask you general questions, general interview questions, they'll ask you technical questions, and they'll also ask you to talk about projects you worked on previously or issues you resolved. When you are explaining these projects, when you are explaining how you resolve these issues, make sure you explain them in a manner that the hiring manager will understand them. If they understand, they will feel competent, they will feel they understood, and they will feel the same way about you. So when you're explaining, because a manager may be a strictly management person, or maybe they were an engineer at some point and they're focusing on managing people today. They could have been an engineer at some point, but not necessarily on the same technologies that you're working on. My point is, don't assume that the interviewer will understand the projects that you worked on when you explain them on an interview. Make sure you explain them well, make sure you explain them in a detailed manner so the interviewer will fully understand and they're gonna feel good and they're gonna believe you are competent. So an example, instead of going to an interview and saying, I worked on a team and we resolved high CPU issues on Cisco routers. Instead of saying that, you can say, I worked with a customer who had a high CPU issue on the router. I did a show proc CPU. All the processes seemed okay. The process was 70%. The interrupt indicator was 30%, which means traffic is not processed at the hardware and it's punted to the CPU. So I looked at all the interfaces and I saw interface 01 had drops. So I knew the issue was related to the traffic traversing interface 01. So I configured a span session to capture traffic from interface 01 and send that traffic to a laptop running Ethereal or Wireshark. We analyzed the traffic on the laptop and we noticed that most packets have a TTL field of 1. The TTL field, the time to live field in the IP header, was 1. We researched these type of packets and we discovered that packets with TTL are not processed at the hardware and they are punted to the CPU for further processing. And that's why the CPU was high on the router. So we looked at these packets, we looked at the source IP, we determined the source IP was a server. We called the server team, they decommissioned the server, they replaced the server, they changed the settings on the server, whatever it was. That way the listener, whether he's a manager or an engineer like yourself, they're gonna understand how you resolve that issue. In fact, they'll be able to resolve the exact same issue next day. I mean, someone may have to provide them the commands or they may research the commands, but they'll be able to resolve the exact same issue because you explained it well. When you explain things well, people feel great because we all like to learn, and when you explain things well and people fully understand, the impression, they're going to feel great about themselves, but the impression about you is also going to be an excellent impression. Thank you.